I reckon I'll keep you posted. So this is not an old tank, but as I showed you there in that little short, we discovered a leak. I believe the leak is coming from this upper element. I'm crossing my fingers that it is anyway. Hard to say how high the water got, but before I wipe it...
How high is the water, mama? 3 feet high and rising.
Before I wiped it out, it looked like it probably got about that high. I don't think anything got to the thermostat there, but I'm going to go ahead and change it since it came with the kit. We're going to swap these parts out because I don't want to spend $600 on a new water heater if I don't have to. I'll try to show you over here. You can see that the left side of this disconnect is all melted, probably because the element shorted out. So for $15, we're going to swap out the quick disconnect box here. Just a real quick safety precaution. You come in here, get on the line side of things, make sure that you got the power cut off. We've double checked it, it's good to go. One thing that I always like to recommend on something like this is that you take a picture of the original wiring before you take anything off, so that you can just plug and play, put it back together the way it was before without having to look it up or research it or troubleshoot anything. This kit at Home Depot, I double checked it is the proper one for the unit. It came with the replacement thermostats, and it was $40 for the whole thing. The individual elements were like $13 a piece, so not much more to get the whole kit. I'm going to try to do this with one hand while I show you. Once you have your wires all disconnected, these little metal tabs right here are what hold the thermostat in place on a ream. There's no screws behind it, so you just have to pry these back, and then you can lift the old thermostat out of its position. I'm going to put the camera down now so I can have both hands to do that. All right, now I have repeated the process on the other side. As you can see back here, no screws in those holes. Some models may have a screw that holds that to the tank rather than this metal clip, so just be aware of that. Here we have the new unit on the left, the old unit on the right. You just want to make sure you have the right thing before you go sticking it back in there, but these ones are strikingly similar. Once we have the new unit in place, we reconnect the wires in reverse order. Do what you can to put the wires where you can on the side of the screw that will draw the wire in rather than push it out when you go to tighten the screw down. And to kind of show you what I'm talking about there, if you see here on this side, the screw tightens clockwise, so I put the wire on top of it so that it would tighten it in. And over here on this one, we did the exact opposite, because again, the screw tightens clockwise, and since the wire is coming in from the other side, we went to the bottom. On this next one right here, we're going to have to put a wire on top and on bottom, so we just have to make sure we hold them in place while we screw them down. And as I mentioned before on this one here, as there's a wire on both sides of the screw, you just had to kind of hold them in place with the pliers while you tighten the screw until you had enough tension on it that they weren't moving anymore. Then snug them down good and tight so they don't move. Now on to the replacement of the element. While I have never had one of these defeat me removing it with a pair of channel locks before, this one didn't want to go. So I went ahead and purchased at about $8 this purpose-built socket, which is designed for removing these. It fits right over the 1.5" threads, and you put a screwdriver through the handle and twist it off. Just like that. Now that we have the old element removed, you can see that it's showing extensive signs of wear, and I'm hoping this was the cause of our leak. There is a fair amount of corrosion around the hole on the inside. I'm going to try to clean that up a little bit before I reinstall the new one. Otherwise, it's kind of hard to show you on the camera here, but there doesn't really appear to be much buildup inside the tank. Before you install the new element, be sure you put the rubber gasket on there. Once you get the new element installed, hook these 2 wires back up to it on either side of the element. Now you'll notice here that the orientation of the two element screws is not exactly like it was on the other one. That's okay, you're just completing a circuit. The wires are just a little bit long because they're long enough to accommodate however it's arranged. In this particular case, as our screws are almost horizontal, you just want to make sure you push your wires back out of the way so they don't get pinched in something when you put everything back together. However, on this one, we're going to leave it open for a day or two so that I can see if there's any water seepage. Moving down to the bottom of the tank, if you made it through the upper thermostat change, the bottom one will be a piece of cake because you actually have quite a bit more room to work with to get it out of here, and the same methodology applies. Again, compare the new and the old units before you reinstall them. We have the old one over here and the new one on the right. Now we'll move on to the removal of the lower element, and while this one may look better than the upper one on the outside, chances are this one has more corrosion around the inside of it because sediment tends to settle in the base of the tank. In this particular case, the lower element wasn't in too bad a shape after all, but we went ahead and swapped it out anyway, because if one is bad, chances are the other one is right behind it. Sorry there, folks, my hands were full, but you saw where we swapped out the old plastic valve for the drain with this new one. It's got a slotted screwdriver head on it to prevent accidental opening, and I've got it angled in such a way that I can hook a garden hose to it and fasten on. All right, one last thing. Rheem recommends that you set your thermostat at 120 degrees. In fact, it comes preset at that temperature. And as a point of reference on a properly functioning water heater, 120 degrees is generally speaking plenty warm to heat the water. Also, you want to make sure that your upper and lower thermostats are set to the same temperature. When you first fill your water heater with water, make sure that it's full of water before you turn on the power to the thermostats. And just know, if you're doing any testing afterwards, that the upper one comes on first and the lower one will not come on until the upper one turns itself off. Another thing I like to do is mark the side of the tank with a Sharpie anytime I do any maintenance on the tank. So here's a real quick rundown to tell you where we're at in terms of what we've got into this project. Including the replacement disconnect here behind me, it cost me about $80 and a good day's tinkering to drain the water heater, replace the elements, replace the thermostats, replace the drain, replace the shut-off disconnect over here at my shoulder here, and get it all put back together. $80 and half a day's work is a lot cheaper than $600 for a new water heater, or even more than that if you hired a professional to do it. So let me know what you thought of this video down below. If you think this is something that might help you in the future, be sure to give us a thumbs up. Consider leaving a comment down below to help us get into the algorithm here on the channel. Until next time, take care. God bless.